Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and after 1 month of Guild Wars, I figured I'd go over the most requested thing related to Guild Wars, and that is how to win it on lower to mid-level ranged accounts. So in this video, I'm going to be going over not really builds, more so how to actually make builds, troops to look out for, and just ways to make teams that will end up countering out whatever you're facing. I will be showing two teams though. One is an infinite loop team that I currently have a 100% win rate with on this level 117 account. Even when we're up against level 1000s, I end up winning with it. And I'm going to show the normal team that I use just generically. But let's go over some just some basic pointers here and there. For one, as a lower level player, you are basically never going to be able to do 4 times of whatever color day it is. At best, you'll be able to do 3, maybe just 2. For the most part, you'll most likely just have to use whatever team you normally use for PvP, maybe with an exception or two, mainly just for maybe a little bit more board control or for more defensive purposes, something like a Dragonian monk possibly. As far as Sentinels are concerned, these are basically pointless for you to upgrade when you are a newer player. They cost so much for how little value they are going to be giving to you. If you're in about like the top 5-ish to 10-ish brackets, you can maybe go for the first 3 upgrades on every single one of them. But anything further than that is pretty much a waste. The only time you would ever have to upgrade all 5 is if you ever reach all the way to bracket 1, because it is actually worth doing so due to the amount of gems you'll be getting from your placement. But other than that, you generally either want to go 0 or 3 at the absolute most. Anything else is basically just throwing your resources away due to how the current reward system is set up for Guild Wars. But let's go into the actual troops and things that you'll be needing. First, as I mentioned, you most likely at this level will not be able to do 4 times of a color. So the best possible thing that you can put into a team when you're using 3 and then 1 that is an off color is any of the 7 convert troops. These, the lower rarity of these are Alchemist, Giant Spider, Valkyrie, and Apothecary. Alchemist does yellow, Giant Spider does purple, Valkyrie does blue, Apothecary does brown. The Alchemist and Valkyrie are only rare, and the Giant Spider and Apothecary are ultra rare. You normally get these troops within your first week or 2 of playing the game, so you most likely will have the ability to utilize them. Alchemist isn't used too much. There's a few instances where he is. Giant Spider is really good because it actually gets to do a summon, and of course, if you do summon in the Guild Wars, there's 2 things that base your points. Well, 3 really. If you win or not is the one main thing that determines it, of course. And there's 2 other factors: how many of the color that you use, and that gets boosted based on your guild's bonus and those percents, and you get that bonus per troop that you use, getting the maximum bonus if you use 4 of that color. But the other thing that determines it is how many troops on your team are still alive at the end of the battle. It doesn't count, it doesn't look to see what colors they are, it just checks how many there are on your team. So if you were to have 2 troops in your, or you have your normal 4 team, all of that same color, and then you have this Giant Spider, 2 of your troops die, but then you resummon these little red things by your Giant Spider, you would still end up getting the full amount of points. Valkyrie does blue and also gains you a little bit of souls passively, and Apothecary does brown and has a full cleanse. There's also 3 other ones, though they are a little bit harder to obtain. Green Seer does green and ends up doing a random entangle, which can be pretty useful, especially if it hits their first troop. Hellcat can do red and does a little bit of random damage. And Keeper of Souls, which I actually don't have on this account, does skulls, as he says. And that's an epic, and a legendary for the Keeper of Souls. Right there is him. And he just transforms a select gem into skulls. All 70 of these are really, really good board control. They can generate all the mana you need, or in the case of a Keeper of Souls, you can use it with something like a Necreza to do a Bone Storm and then get a bunch of skulls everywhere and kind of go something like that. But those already 7 converts. Definitely, if you find yourself losing a bunch, just do a triple color and then use one of those. So let's go into some of the color options now. These aren't actual teams, just a couple colors that of troops that you may want to utilize whenever you do any of these color-related days. And first up is the Dragontar. Dragontar, if you're going to be using anything dragon-oriented, really good boost on him. Basically, anything that has a high boost ratio is really good to consider in pretty much all battling when you're first starting out. But this is particularly useful because it can help to keep you alive with the armor that it does, as long as they don't have true damage. And assuming that you're using at least 2 dragons, or preferably 4, if you could actually fit that many on your team, will end up giving you a pretty substantial buff. Christina acts a little bit of a higher rarity, but it covers basically all grounds if you can end up getting it as one of your troops. It deals damage to all enemies. It has a summon, and if you can ever eventually get to the point where you get it fully traded, which is way down the line, you can even put 3 to 4 of these on your team, or 2, 3, or 4, or really any amount, and you're basically going to be set, because it just generates its own mana just from taking a purple every single turn and gains 2 mana passively, and that alone can be enough to kill out many teams. Dark Maiden is a really nice choice on both green and red days, because it can transform all yellows into whatever color you want, meaning you can farm whatever color of the day is, green, red, or anything else that you may need. She also has a nature link for a +1 green, which helps on both days. On a green day, it'll just help your team accumulate more mana, and on a red day, she'll likely be your only green, and then she'll be able to get up in 2 turns, assuming at least one of your matches are a surge. And of course, the Notorious Ranger, even though it got nerfed a bit in the past, it still has a very strong 4 times boost ratio, and is a really solid option still earlier on in the game. Some purple options. Herdmaster, definitely one of the absolute best, and not only has a cleanse for all of your allies, which can get rid of those pesky death marks and all other stats effects, it also gives you a bunch of explosions and will pretty much always explode all the yellows on the board. And he even gets a +1 yellow to his color, which helps on regardless if it's a yellow or a purple day. Generally, you use him in first slot, especially since he gets the leadership trait on his second trait, and is just all around really good for mana generation. Only a 12 mana cost, one of the lowest in the game, and the fact that it has cleanse on top of that is a very good utility. Owlliff is good on purple days and is relatively cheap, only a rare, and it can create a dark storm. This is really useful, of course, on purple days, because you can just use its ability and then get a bunch more purple on the board. Maybe do a Dragon Soul explosion, or any explosion, maybe Coronet, or if you don't have an explosion, just do something with a very large amount of board control, and you'd pretty much be good to go with all the purples that will drop. Next up is Nakriza. She can mainly use with Keeper Souls, though there are a couple instances that you can still utilize her. One thing that's pretty nice about her is she does have dispels, so you can get rid of all of their barriers, enchants, and other positive stats effects. And she also summons a random undead, and of course summoning is pretty valuable within Guild Wars. And a little bit of a more expensive option, you've seen these many times when I've done the Guild Wars in the past, is a Cabarrus. Cabarrus on its own, without any traits, is a little bit towards the weaker side. I wouldn't really advise using it within Guild Wars, but once it's fully traded, it is very powerful with a 100% chance to summon a warg every single time you end up getting a kill. It does block on one of its mana, the purple, but it's still really good value to have on your team. A couple of red options. Alchemist. If you have anything on your team that needs yellow, well, he'll get all the yellow for you. Again, similarly, Dark Maiden, really good. Anything that can generate, really, absolutely anything that ever comes into the game that can generate its own mana will be really good on Guild War days, because you can just have it generate your own mana, and then you don't really have to worry about mana generation as much. It's really important to have mana generation when doing Guild Wars. It's important to have a summon, mana generation, and a high damage output. Sometimes you also need some protection, maybe like a Dragonian Monk or something like that. But those are the main things you normally want to target out. Goblin Rocket, really good, automatically gains an extra turn, has board control with its explosion, and it has a fire link on its very first trait, very cheap to get. So much so I even got it on this account because of how good value it is, and you can just spam them out like crazy. And some of the more higher options to look out for definitely would be a Crimson Bat, Tesla, and things of the such, maybe even a Draculus if you happen to get that lucky. They hit true damage on all enemies. We can get magic buffs on these. These work out really well. These also work out really well with a Valkyrie, because Valkyrie is also a red, so you can get their blue mana right into them pretty easily doing something like that. Kind of like how you would with an Alchemist into a big yellow. You would use a Valkyrie into a Crimson Bat, Tesla, Draculus, any of those really big hitting red or blue troops. Next up is all of the brown options. Emperor Corvash, the more expensive option, really good all around in Guild Wars. It has a mana drain, it has true damage, and it has a stun particularly useful against the very overused Death Knight class. I'm not quite sure how often it's used earlier on in the game. I haven't seen it too much on this account, but I've only done, I think, like, actually, I believe I've done the same amount of battles. So yeah, I haven't actually seen it that much on this account, but still, stun whenever you do end up seeing traits is very, very good value. And if you get it fully traded, it can just stun out the entire enemy team, and that works out pretty well as well. Of course, I have Dragontar again, but the main thing here is Dragonian Monk. I cannot express enough how insanely powerful this is in Guild Wars. It destroys gems in an X shape. There is a lot of things that you can do once you learn how to use an X. I should probably do sometime in a video on like just how to use his ability. But other than the X destroy that he does, meaning you gain all the mana for everything within the shape of that X, you also gain a barrier for a random ally for every yellow gem you destroy, and as long as you destroy 4 yellow gems, it will shield your entire team with barriers. So that's very useful. Plus, barrier is, the dev said, will likely be buffed in the nearest future to have immunity to devour, so it's going to be even more powerful than what it is now. Its traits are pretty useless other than the fact that it has immunity to Deathmark. Well, I guess it has fast too, which can sometimes come in handy since you can get his ability up the initial time a bit quicker. But yeah, definitely a very, very, very solid troop for pretty much every brown and yellow day. If you don't have something like a Gorgoltha or anything yet, pretty much every brown yellow day you will want to put a Dragonian Monk on your team for the most part. And another one, Emperina. You end up getting this from completing out the Keysail Kingdom all the way up in the north, that little dwarf place. Pretty nice because it can do a full heal and ends up giving it life, attack, and of course it's the full cleanse as well. It's pretty good for building one really big troop and then just killing out the entire enemy team with. It's also really good with all on brown days with other skull spam teams because you can just buff up your first slot, keep it alive, get that attack buff, and then kind of tear through the enemy team, assuming that they don't have any skull protections. Or you can just use it on a vital troop to help keep it alive. Next up are all the yellow options. Knight Coronet. I'm pretty sure most people know by now how powerful Knight Coronet is. Knight Coronet is arguably one of the best troops when you're first starting out in the game. It scales really, really well into mid-game. It fully uses every single one of its traits, which is one of the few troops that like really utilize its traits well. But as a leader, it gains extra magic off of its other one, and you tend to use it with quite a bit of blues, especially if you were using it on a blue Guild War day. That'd be 4 additional magic, assuming you would actually be using it with a full team. Plus, it has Stone Skin once you get it full all the way up before that 50% skull reduction, and it hits 2 enemies and removes all purple, so you can even use it to deny purple if you want to use it on your defend team or something. But one thing that also makes this really strong, which not a lot of other troops do, but if there's only one troop remaining on the enemy team, it will hit it twice. Even though it hits the first and last enemy, it will hit them twice if it's only one remaining. Many things that hit 2 troops will not actually hit the last one twice when there's only one remaining. Normally they hit 2 random ones that are still alive and will only hit once if there's one remaining. But that does boost them up quite a bit, because as they start losing more and more troop, you can just keep taking advantage of that and just do skull pokes, and it works out pretty nice. Of course, Dragonian Monk, can't stress that enough, every brown and yellow day. Goblin Rocket for those extra turns, board control, really solid, anytime you can get better board control. And Mana Core, basically the budget version of a Emperor Corvash if you don't have a Emperor Corvash. It also gets Impervious pretty easily, Fast Trait pretty easily, but it stuns an enemy and drains 7 of their mana. It can be pretty useful against anything that gets a very intimidating ability that you want to get out quickly, since you'd only need about 1 or 2 matches with his Fast Trait to be able to get him up. Well, even without his Fast Trait, you could probably get him up in 2 turns, and then he gains a bit of attack afterwards. And lastly, we have our blue options here. Deckhand, as I mentioned earlier, anything that can generate its own color in Guild Wars is really, really strong. Deckhand can generate blue, and he's a blue, so it works out pretty nice. Astral Spirit, mainly used when fully traded, has immunity to Deathmark, as well as, of course, it's empowered, which allows it to have a remove all gems of a chosen color from the very first turn. This is a pretty immense amount of board control, as you can either use this to gain an extra turn, set up the board how you want, or remove a color that you do not use. It is pretty likely in Guild Wars that you are not using all 6 colors, and she can definitely help you with getting them away. Justice is a pretty exclusive niche kind of troop, but you would use it whenever you have some kind of free spam team if you're going to go down that route. Most notably, you would use this with either a Ice Golem, Queen Mab, or a Borealis, as all three of them can fairly easily completely freeze the enemy team, and it has an absolutely insane ratio right now on frozen troops. It ends up gaining 4 additional attack and life to all other allies per frozen enemy, for a absolutely huge 16 boost to all other allies when the entire enemy team is frozen. So regardless of your level, that is a very huge boost. You can even see on this guy right now, based on his current stats, he'd basically be doubling, or more than doubling, because you get the extra base as well. He'd be more than doubling his current attack, or all the other allies, I mean, attack and HP per cast, assuming that you actually had the entire enemy team frozen. So insanely good value there. And again, Emperor Corvash for the stuns, for the drains and everything like that. Of course, these aren't all the only options for every single one of the colors, just the ones I thought I should definitely mention as noteworthy. And now just for some of the higher rarity ones that you should look out for if you do end up getting one. Amnesia, really good, has the full explosion, ends up summoning an Inferno King, definitely one to consider. Death is pretty good for defending, not so much for invading, I found, though of course just those random death marks are pretty powerful. 10% chance every single turn to kill. Death will be a little bit less effective once they end up nerfing Death Mark in the nearest future, like they said they would, but as of this current moment, really good value. Draculus, really good on red days with a Valkyrie, as I mentioned, and if you have Crimson Bat and a Draculus, you're pretty much just set for every red day into the future. Elma Grim, I do like using if you can get up to Impervious, so as you're about to see, I do use it on one of my teams as well, even without the Impervious. Famine, we all know how annoying Famine is. Even after its nerf, it's still a ridiculously good troop. Great value, great mana drain, great everything pretty much. Still use it. I use it on mainly brown and yellow days. Green days, I skip it. Though, of course, if you don't have this, you could easily go Dragonian Monk or something like that. Guard's Avatar and the other armor boosts like Rowan, Paladin, and all that kind of stuff, I tend to stay away from when doing Guild War battles. The main reason for this is it's always a little bit scary. If they end up doing physical damage to you, you'll fall behind, and it's really easy with these kind of armor boosting teams to lose. They're made to win quick. They're not really made to win consistently for the most part, and you do want to kind of avoid using them in Guild Wars. If you are going to use them in Guild Wars, I would advise having Prismatic Orb first, the one that you get at like 25 all hero masteries, as this covers all colors. You can just put it all the way in your last slot, and you can use it on whatever your defense buffing troop is. Put it on this, or whatever your other one might be, Rowan, Paladin, whatever you're using, and kind of go from there. Though that's about the only team you can kind of really use it with. For the most part, I would advise staying away from them. Other things noteworthy, let's see, noteworthy. Behemoth on occasion, normally use Emperor Corvash for brown-blue days, but it does have Impervious, and of course Impervious is pretty useful. Borealis you'd only really use if you're going for the Justice Freeze. Bone Dragon, I would mainly stay with Keeper of Souls, mainly due to its consistency. Carnix is pretty good because you use it for its Impervious if you can ever get it. It also does quite a bit of explosions if you don't have something like a Dragon Soul yet. Crimson Bat, as I mentioned, really strong. You use it mainly with Valkyrie. Corvash, as I mentioned, probably one of the better legends that you can really have for Guild War days. It basically has all the disables you really need. The main two ones these days that you really need are Mana Drain and Stun. Mana Drain because there's really no disable to it. Stun because you don't want those really annoying traits triggering. As far as Guardian, we all know how often this thing gets used. It's mainly used with Kabira's combo. Earlier on in the game, you probably never really need to worry about this thing because it's only ever used fully traded with other fully traded troops for the most part. But as I said, stuns and stuff like that, Sion's pretty good against it as well. Garuda, if you happen to get this, really good. It's self-sustainable because it creates a firestorm to its own color. Really anything that can storm to its own color, which is I think almost every storm. Anything that covers 2 colors or more that can storm to its own color tends to be pretty decent. Gorgolfa, definitely a very solid brown and yellow first slot. I use this as my first slot every single day whenever I do my Guild War battles on my main. mainly because it's just so ridiculously tanky. You would need it fully traded, and if you don't, you'd most likely want to stay with something like a Dragonian Monk until then. Keeper of Souls, you'd use, of course, for the Skull transform if you happen to have it fully traded, which is pretty poor value, but he does have a 50% chance to summon a white. Wish it was 100% to match Cabarrus, or lower Cabarrus's to match Keeper of Souls, or go the middle ground and make them both 75%. But I don't quite understand why he's only 50%. Maybe they'll change in the future, but still really good for skull control if you need that for your team. Kraken, immensely strong, and not only has damage, it has some accumulation of mana, and it has a Devour. And it also, if you happen to get his traits, stacks out a lot of damage. Kristinex is literally a solo team. If you get a bunch of these fully traded, you can literally just use that. Otherwise, you'd have to incorporate it into some kind of dragon team or just kind of work around. Moloch is also good to look out for. It's a pretty good drain if you don't have something like a Famine for a yellow day or a red day or something like that. Can work out pretty well. Sion, mainly only used if fully traded, mainly because of its Siphon, which whenever it takes skulls, will end up draining all the enemy's mana from the first troop, and it gives it to itself, and then it can just keep spamming its ability. Not fully traded, I'd stay away from it. Queen Mab, fully traded again. If this was fully traded, you'd use it mainly with a Justice. You can stack out a lot of extra stats for free without even wasting any of your turns. She also has a pretty high damage output, assuming none of them have Mana Shield or Impervious. Queen Jezebel, not too oftenly used in Guild Wars, though if you wanted to go for a triple option and you didn't want to go for the whole convert thing, you could end up using Queen Jezebel. She's most notably would be used with something like a Dragon Soul or a Gurgoltha if you were to use her within a mixed color. I don't think there's too much you could really use for her on a green-blue day. Most of those other options you'd be better off just using a Kristinex with. And anything else? Sylvania Moore, if you happen to have it fully traded, is good for Entangle. Tesla is basically just Crimson Bats, just with slightly more damage. Dragon Soul, really high damage output, insanely good earlier on in the game too. Still one of the strongest troops in early game, if not the strongest, because it can hit 20 damage at any level. All you have to do is have 4 dragons on your team, and it deals 20 damage to all enemies per cast, not to mention it gains souls and it explodes a bunch of gems. Those gems are based on its magic though, and at a lower level that will be a pretty low amount of explosions. As you can see, this one is only doing 9. I think my main does like 17 explosions or something ridiculous. But oh, and yeah, I guess a few more. Great Maul, not really overly used. Gurgoltha or Dragonian Monk is almost always better. Very rarely this may be used if you're a lower player, mainly because you can gain the stats of the opponent, and if they are really outscaling you on stats, you can maybe go for some kind of skull-oriented team with a Great Maul, get the brown gems that it creates into one of your brown skull generators, maybe like a Keeper of Souls or something, throw that down, and then go for the extremely big Maul. A little bit dangerous to do, though if it works, it will pretty much win every time that you end up getting the full setup going. Like pretty much as soon as you get the Great Maul cast, as long as you get the extra turn off of it, which is a little bit randomness, because it does have that double, I hate pretty much anything that does the double gem spawn, but it is pretty good value on the Great Maul. And the Silent One, while I personally don't use this much, if you happen to have it earlier on in the game, it is ridiculously good value, because most things won't have the immunity to silence trait. So you'll be able to get away with silencing a lot more than what you would normally get away with later on in the game. And if you happen to pick this up like before level 200 or so, which we actually have, it would end up being pretty effective against most of the teams that you will be facing. Pretty much any team that does not have any immune to silence, Silent One would be a okay option to consider. Not to mention, if you have the very first trait on it, of Water Link, you'll be able to get it straight up just that much quicker. And the last final option as far as Legends Pluses that you'll want to look out for is Web Spinner, really good on green days. As I said, anything that can create its own color, it's a very good and effective on its corresponding colored day. So now for 2 teams that I want to show, and these 2 are the oops, why am I going to PvP? These 2 are the most, well, one of them is the most effective winning team I have found, and the other one is just the one that I tend to normally use. So I'm going to be going over both of them. First, I'm going to be going off the one I have a 100% win rate off of so far. It has won, I think it's 15 battles straight in Guild Wars without losing a single time. Probably should have shown this a little bit earlier in the video. I'll probably timestamp it in the description or something, though, for the people that didn't catch it, or maybe make a comment on it. But Hellcat, Alchemist, Goblin Rocket, Goblin Rocket. If you guys saw the stream last Saturday, and I believe the Saturday before that, I ended up doing this team. It was, wow. I've done this team in the past, but I've actually forgotten how powerful it still is. I'm pretty sure as I'm doing this recording, this will end up being the first time I ever lose with this. But so far, I have never actually lost with this. You set it to a double yellow banner. You make sure you have both your Goblin Rockets with Fire Link. It's also good to have Alchemist with Fire Link, but as you're about to see, that is actually not a necessity. So we have 0 traits on Hellcat, 0 traits on Alchemist, and just the first trait on both of our Goblin Rockets. One thing to note is that there isn't really an alternative to Hellcat. There is one. There's Banshee. But the problem with Banshee is it has a lot less options. It can only do blue to red. With a Hellcat, we can do any of the other 5 colors to red, which opens up a lot of possibilities. And I find it just a little bit too limiting if you try doing this with a Banshee. It is a little bit required that you do have a Hellcat, which is a bit unfortunate. It is an epic. Not much I can say about that unless maybe until the crafting system comes out or something. So all we really need to do right now is try getting that last little bit of mana that we need. Board's going a little bad right now, but once we get that, we will essentially just infinitely loop as long as the board goes in our favor. So yeah, keep giving me bad board, it looks like. That's not going to come out well then. I can Skull Distract, though the amount of damage it's going to do to us is not pleasant whatsoever. And we do need, one slightly bad thing about this team is we do need literally every troop to survive in order to really get this going. It does look like we have an opening. It doesn't use the purple. It will, what will it do here? We'll take the yellow. It'll take the purples. It will, okay, unless something cascades. I don't think it gets much here. So we'll do that. And don't you dare skull. Don't you dare skull. Trying to show this for the video. Good, it did not skull. And did we actually get it off this board? It can come pretty close sometimes. We actually could have lost this. It is still winnable if you do end up losing one. But once you get it going, it is absolutely insane. Especially once you, well, there isn't too much of a learning curve for how to do this team. It's pretty straightforward, or at least I think it's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is just keep throwing the Goblin Rockets for board control, for skulls, and pretty much once you get it going, it never stops. Like right now, we'll just want to get rid of all these skulls right here, just by doing that explosion. Then we're going to just keep converting, keep going back and forth on both of them, throwing the Goblin Rockets whenever we get them, recast, and just keep repeating that over and over and over and over again until we inevitably win. And this can, of course, take out literally anything, because assuming that you're not frozen, which if you did, you probably lost, unfortunately. I've been lucky enough not to get frozen with it yet, but it is definitely freezable, of course. But as long as it doesn't get frozen, as long as, like, pretty much the second you get this started, it will never end. And that is definitely very, very good. And as you can see here, this we have our Hellcat aligned already, so we're just going to throw our Goblin Rockets up at the top. I'm trying to get rid of as many skulls as possible while trying to get as many reds and yellows onto the board with those explosions, and I'm aiming accordingly. And we'll just do the convert over there. That will give us Alchemist. Our Alchemist will then go. We get another double Goblin Rocket, and yeah, it doesn't matter what their stats are. They could have infinite, or maybe not infinite stats, but they could have like a couple hundred stats above you, or that would never happen, but they could have like triple your stats, or yeah, that's basically what's happening right now. They could basically have triple your stats, and you can still very easily come through with a team like this. I'm just double checking where we're going to go. Okay, yeah, we're going to do it on blue next time around, so we'll just throw that out. Throw the other Goblin Rocket. Sure, how about the corner right there? And then we'll convert out that blue, get our mana back into our Hellcat and our 2 Goblin Rockets, and just keep going from there. And we'll throw that out at the top. Of course, this would be ideal for red and yellow days. For both days, it covers 3 color. You could technically use this for every day, though the amount of points that you would get on any day that's not a red or yellow day would be pretty substantially hit. Unless you are losing like 3 or 4 of your battles, I wouldn't really advise using this team on any day other than a red or yellow day. But for red or yellow days, this is the best possible option I can even fathom this early on in the game. I haven't come up with a build that is this excessively strong for every single color. Unfortunately, not every single color has builds this strong. Maybe as they add more troops into the game, that will of course become more useful, as I mentioned, or more options I should say. As I mentioned in the past, Sir Gawain, Sir Guild Wars is pretty good. I didn't end up mentioning quite a few of the other ones, actually pretty good too. But if you ever have any questions about them, always feel free to just ask, because there are a lot of them that tend to come into the game that they're making specifically for the Guild Wars that end up working out pretty well, and it kind of changes kind of what works when you're a newer player from week to week. But sticking with some of the more safer ones, things that have board control, things that have barriers, things that have shields, anything that can get you very high damage output, anything that can get you instant kills, tend to always be some of the better options. But as you can see right there, you can just infinitely loop as much as you want. And now, while not realistic to really build, here is the other team that I normally use on a standard, oops, not that one, the standard Guild War day on this account, and that is a Dragon Soul, Dragonian Monk, Christinex, and Elma Grimm. Of course, the main thing I want to show off in this team is the Dragonian Monk. As I mentioned, Dragonian Monk is... I never actually used it on my main account, but when you're a newer player, it is definitely something you will want to consider slotting into pretty much every team you are ever going to be guild warring with. It's even better than Gorgolfa in many instances, not all, but it is definitely really nice to have. You can get that barrier off, you can get the board control with it, and it serves a lot of purposes for you. Unfortunately, this is looking like a pretty bad start. We'll take a skull. We do get yellow out of it, though we are a little bit down on our yellow because of the banner. This team is made to rush up the Dragon Soul as quickly as possible, and whenever we don't get those colors, it is disabled quite a bit, because this team is made expecting that we will end up getting Dragonian's Monk color, mainly from his X's and from the Dragon Soul. But we did get our explosion just slightly before his, so we'll throw ours down. Of course, with an all-dragon team, we end up doing 20 damage to all enemies with that Dragon Soul right there. So we'll just go get our X down, and let's see. Where do we have? Gosh, gonna be bad to me right now. Nope, we do get a 4. Just looking where all the cascades go. So we'll just go for the standard 4. I'm not going to bother going for any board control with it. I already see the skull distract. Oh, wait, never mind. We did end up moving it so we don't get the skull distract. I still messed it up quite a bit. But we'll move that over. We'll take the red first, because it'll still keep our extra turn intact. That'll also give us the rest of the mana we need for another Dragonian Monk. We'll throw down the skull right there. Another skull, nice. Though he does have granite skin, so it's not really killing through. Well, we have barrier on everything. I guess we might as well use Dragon Soul here. Actually, let me Christinex. I believe that's more damage. Our Dragon Soul is limited to only 20, of course, as its absolute max hit. So we'll let that happen. Let our Dragon Soul go. We still have all of our barriers. Of course, each barrier will deflect an entire damage instance. And of course, when you're fighting people who have a lot higher stats than you, if you ever happen to fight people who have higher stats than you when this early in the game, you will definitely be seeing them. It is a good idea to use Dragonian Monk, because it doesn't matter how much you're actually dealing. The barrier will completely negate out one damage instance. Do keep in mind that it does not work against Skull Spam. Don't know if they're changing that in the future. But for example, it probably won't happen this battle. But if he ends up using his Bone Dragon on us, we will end up taking pretty much all of that skull damage if he does a huge clump of skulls, because it calculates it weird. I don't know. That's basically the only explanation I can really think for it. It calculates clumps of skulls very weird. But, oh no, it's going to kill out our Dragon Soul right there. As I mentioned earlier, one way that you can conserve points if you are looking to try to get a lot of points within Guild Wars is to get a summon. Christinex is indeed a summon, and we can do that to get another troop back in, and it doesn't matter what the color is of the day. It only counts the colors at the beginning of a Guild War battle. Keep that in mind, because you can use any colored summon. It doesn't matter what the color's day is. Like, let's say, I don't know what the first day was. Let's say it was blue. Even if it was blue, even though that's a purple summon, it still counts based on what we started with, which is just one Christinex. So it would count it for only one bonus. And that's how it determines the score. It determines your colors at the beginning of the battle, and it determines how many are alive at the end of the battle without paying any attention to what their color actually is. So right here, we'll just take the Christinex, so go again, get another summon. Hopefully this time we'll be able to keep it alive with barrier. Do we take the yellow? We get a skull out of it, though I end up denying my yellow, which is not a good idea to do when you're using Dragonian Monk. But I will do it for the skull value. He is really tanky, mainly because Celistacia does indeed have 50% this week. That is very annoying. Really, any week. That's another thing you can kind of do, too, if you're earlier on in the game, though it does run through your souls pretty heavily, and that is to use whatever troops have the 50% bonuses for the week. Though, if you constantly do this literally every single week, you will run out of souls in like 2 weeks because it uses up a lot of souls if you just try doing whatever the current week's best troops are as far as the bonuses. Though, as you get more stuff and you get more things leveled, it does become easier and easier to actually keep doing from week to week. But we'll go throw that down. Just get double barrier. It did land on the right one. We get our extra turn off the top right there. And we're really close. All we really need is a Christine X. He depends on the boost ratio, if that'll be enough damage or not. But we'll go throw that down. And maybe we'll just exit out if we need a little bit more damage from there. We'll just take the reds. And there we go. Elma Grim will be our final damage. That's not enough. I believe purple is the most populated. So we'll see if that is enough. And it is indeed. So yeah. This is what I normally do for... This is basically my normal PvP team that I was referring to. You do generally just want to use whatever your PvP team is in Guild Wars if you are unable to use whatever the pure color of the day is. And what was the pure color of today? Oh, it was purple. So technically we could have probably done something with like double Dragon Soul or something. My purple team is not really that good though on this account, mainly because Dragon Soul is like literally my only option, that and Inferno King. And it don't really synergize that well together. But anyways, that will wrap it up for my explanation of Guild Wars. I hope I covered everything and kind of explained all the basic ins and outs, kind of troops you need, ways to build it and such. If you do have any questions ever about it, always feel free to ask because I can answer any of them that you ever have. I will try to do additional videos kind of similar to this in the future. I do stream this quite a bit as well. Saturdays are normally the days I stream this specific account, doing Guild Wars on this account. Lately, I've actually just been throwing the Goblin Rocket team at everything just because it works so insanely well. But of course, I also throw that main team that you also just saw. And occasionally I switch it up with a couple of the other ones, like with Knight Coronet and stuff. That's a little bit hard to keep switching up, though, when you have limited souls. And it's normally just best kind of getting one team initially, get it nice and solid, learn how to actually use it, and then kind of go from there, start branching out into other teams, and just go on from there. But anyways, that'll wrap it up. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.